So we're going to read one of the most painful stories in the history of the Jews, the Asarei Harugei Malchus, the 10 tzaddikim that were killed. Rabbi Akiva with a rake, another tzaddik, they burnt him in public, another tzaddik, they cut off his head. There was one tzaddik, his name was Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol. Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol, says in the Gemara, was the most beautiful man in the world. The Gemara says, not that we can understand what the Gemara is saying exactly, but if you want to know what the Shekhinah looked like, if you want to know what Hashem's Shekhinah looked like, look at the face of Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol. That's a big compliment. That's like crazy handsome. Okay? Crazy good looking. Shmuel Kohen Gadol was the most beautiful man in the world. And the king who wanted to kill him, his daughter, the princess, saw him. And she fell in love with his looks. And she went to her father and she said, I know you're killing all the rabbis, but this rabbi, he's so gorgeous. I want him for myself. Of course, the king would not let him live. So the king said, no problem. What do you love about him? That he's beautiful? We're going to peel his face, the skin off his face. His lips, his face, we're going to peel it. Then we're going to stuff it. We'll kill him by doing that. And that way, we'll put this doll of his face in your room, and for the rest of your life, you want to look at a pretty face, you look at it. And she agreed. Good idea, Dad. Russia. And as we say, they took his face and they peeled the skin, his whole face. They peeled the skin off his face, and when they reached to the makam of this tefillin, his forehead, he let out a scream that the Shemayim shook, and he died. And the Malachim came and said to Hashem, V'zu Torah, v'zu Zecharia, this is how you pay back a rabbi. And Hashem said, if I hear one more word, I will destroy the world, I will turn it into water. Why did Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol deserve to die such a terrible, painful death, and that his face should be stuffed and be on the mantle of this princess, this Russia? What did he do? And a few years ago, I found the answer in Rav Chaim Vital, the Talmud of the Zoya of the Ari HaKadosh. He wrote the answer of why Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol's beauty was peeled and he died such a gruesome death. And he says the following: Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol haya Gilgul shel Yosef HaTzadik. Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol was the Gilgul of Yosef HaTzadik. Ubas, and the daughter of Belial, of this king, haya Eshes Potiphar, was the wife of Potiphar, that the whole situation happened with Yosef HaTzadik and the wife of Potiphar. And we know that Yosef HaTzadik didn't do the Avera. She was the most beautiful woman in the world. He was the most beautiful man in the world. And in the end, he ran away from her. So what do you want from Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol? And now we understand, says Reb Chaim Vital, why Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol was the most beautiful man in the world. Because he was a Gilgul of Yosef HaTzadik, who was the most beautiful man in the world. So if he's a Gilgul of him, sure, he looks like him. As it's brought down in the Sefer Gilgulim, that the Gilgul looks like the original. So every person in this room who's back, let's say from 1,000 years ago, whoever you were looked exactly like you look today. He wasn't dressed like you. He was dressed in the times of those times, but his face and his features are exactly, every Gilgul you come back, you look exactly the same. Your body doesn't change. And that answers one of the questions, what body do you come back in? So the Sefer Gilgulim says your body's always the same. Who am I going to come back like? The guy before me? Was he 800 pounds? Was he 6'10"? What did he look like? Sefer Gilgulim says he looked exactly like you look like. You're just in a different time, so you dress differently. But it's you. It's you, because your neshama is you, whatever that means. In other words, you look like what you look like because it's your neshama. So just take my word. So whenever you were here, it's exactly what you look like. Same height, same everything, no different. So Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol was as beautiful as Yosef HaTzadik. So of course he was the most beautiful man in the world. So what did they want from him? Why did they peel off his face? Says Rav Chaim Vital, an amazing thing. And it's brought down like this, that when she saw Yosef, she fell in love with him because he was gorgeous. And she became sick. Why didn't she go to the party? Everybody left the house, right? Everybody left the house. Who was left? Eshes Potiphar. It was the birthday of Paro, I believe. That's why they went. Why didn't she go? So it says she was sick. Why was she sick? because she was so in love with Yosef and she couldn't have him, it made her sick. So her friends one day said to her, "You're Meshuggah, why are you sick?" She said, "Ish Ivri, I have a Jew. He is so gorgeous, and I want him, and I can't get him. I'm sick." And they said, "Are you crazy? A Jew? An ugly Jew? There can't be such a thing as a beautiful Jew. All the beautiful people are Mitzrayim." She said, "Really? You're making fun of me?" She says, "Okay, tomorrow I'm making a party, and I'm going to let you meet this Jew called Yosef." And she took a room and she put 12 seats around, and she gave all these girls, these friends of hers, a seat, and she gave each one an esrog and a knife. That's what they used to eat. That was their produce. They didn't have oranges, right? Okay. And they're all sitting there and they're beginning to peel their esrog, they're waiting for Yosef. And the Medrash said that she took Yosef in chains and she put on his neck a brace, because Yosef would never lift up his head that these women should see his face, right? So she put him in a brace that he couldn't move right or left, he couldn't move up or down. His face was fixed like this. So the women could all see his face. So the Medrash says that when they brought him in, the girls that were sitting there peeling their esrogim, right, all of a sudden they were cutting off the tops of their fingers. And there was such an awe of his beauty, they never saw such a thing, that their fingers were bleeding. So she turned around, Potiphar's wife, Eshes Potiphar, she turned around, she said, "You're making fun of me? Check out your finger, you're cutting him off. He's so beautiful." The Medrash says that for 1 second, Yosef HaTzadik looked at Eshes Potiphar. And even though he had no choice because his head was in a brace, he thought about her for 1 second, what he saw. And for that 1 second, he had to come back in a Gilgal and have his whole beauty peeled off. 1 second, he was forced to look at her, but he thought about what he saw. For 1 second, he had to come back and suffer the most hideous death that a person could imagine. And why did she have a right to look at him, to have his face stuffed, and to look at him forever? He gave her that right by allowing himself to think about her for a second. Now I'm going to really scare you. I'm not here to scare you. I want you to love Hashem. This is not a scare tactic. I don't want to scare you. I want you to understand that this world is not just a simple little game. So what is he telling us here? What does Rav Chaim Vital? So Rav Chaim Vital continues, and the Kavayosha picks up on this, and this is what he says. And this is the scariest part. That when you look at a girl, boys, not only do you get her tumah, all her tumah goes in through your eyes into your soul, affects your prayer, affects your shalom bayis, affects your nerves, affects your parnasa. Okay, so I can do tshuva on that. I can get her out of my system. I can exercise it. I'll do tshuva. I'll fast. I'll pray. Good. But she gets your kedusha. When you look at that girl, in comes her tumah to you, but since you looked at her, her neshama has a right to take your kedusha. So now she's walking around with a part of you. And that's very hard to get back. So the Eshes Potiphar, by Yosef looking at her for that 1 second and thinking about her, she got a part of him. She got a part of him. And he says with Chaim Vital that Yosef did not rest until he came back as Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol and took his part back by dying in such in a hideous way. But she still got a piece of him, but she only got his guf. Now I'm going to blow your minds right out the door, and you can dance in your kitchen about this. How do we know from the Torah that this is what happened? From the Chumash. It's amazing. I was flying when I saw this. So now let's think about this again for a second. Yosef HaTzadik had to come back to get back the part that she took from him by him looking at her. Okay? Listen carefully. No, you ridiculous. Boys, all those girls you look at, they have a part of you. You're going to have to come back and get it back. It's not easy. You need to do tshuva big time, big time, big time. It's very hard to get back. You have to come back. All those disgusting and the girls that you're looking at on the movies and these other places, these are the avadim of the Satan. They come to this world to cause men to do averis. They are so full of tumah. They're taking your kedusha. That's what keeps them alive. We'll talk one day about a guy who was messing with a girl, and the story's in the Avas Chaim, and she was a Shin Dalet. All those women of the night, some of them are not even human. Some of them come from the other side totally. And at Nebuch, they take Jewish neshamas left and right, left and right. And if a person looks at a girl, she gets part of your neshama. It's a very scary thing. But how do we know this from the Chumash? You read? There was nobody in the house. But this Pisheya b'Bigdai, she caught hold of his garment. Laban saying, Shechra imi, lay with me. Vayazov Bigdai biyado. Vayazov Bigdo biyado. He left his clothing in her hand. What does that mean, he left his clothing in her hand? He left part of his chitzonios in her hand. Because he looked at her, she got a part of him. Beferish Pasuk in Chumash, says Rav Chaim Vital. He ran away? Did he get away without leaving anything? He didn't do the Aveira. He ran away. He didn't do the Aveira. What do you mean? He left something in her hand. Says Rav Chaim Vital, he left part of his neshama in her hand because he thought about her for a second. And that's why the Torah says, "Vayazeh bigda biyadai, vayanas vayetzei achutza, vayi kir'oisa ki'ada bigda biyada, vayanas achutza." When she realized that she had a part of him, she realized, I got a part of him. He looked at me. She ran outside. She said, "Now I can take him down." If he would have ran away and he wouldn't have looked at me at all, then I wouldn't have been able to take him down. But I got a part of him. He looked at me. Every girl you look at, every picture you look at, every filthy thing you look at, they get a part of you. And you got to come back and get that part back. And that's a very painful situation. So you need to do tshuva now, while you can, so that they have no part of you. And he says, Taka, Batanach bigdai etzla, aboy adenovo beisai. She took his chitzainia, she took this bigdai, this part that she got from Yosef. She took it and she put it next to her. And Yosef couldn't get it back. It's an unbelievable Rav Chaim Vital. And he suffered until he came back as Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol. He couldn't get it back. And by suffering that misa that he suffered, she got to take his chitzonius, his face, his guf, she got to take it, and to keep it, he got back the whole Yosef HaTzadik, and that was a tikkun of Yosef HaTzadik. It's Rav Chaim Vital. Watch your eyes, boys.